one of the things that I'm most excited about with AI is how much it knows. And I do think that the biggest impact AI might have on the enterprise is not automation. I think it's actually going to be measurement.
Frontline hiring has historically been under-led and under-resourced relative to corporate talent acquisition, but that's changing. Today, business execs need our leadership. The decisions we make about strategies, technology, processes, roles, resources, and analytics, they're all going to have a big impact on the quality of hires we make, which directly impacts costs and revenue to the business. Try harder as a strategy just won't cut it. Join me, John Vlastelica, as we learn from the leaders raising the bar on frontline hiring. My guest today is Tyler Weeks. Tyler is the VP for People Technology Research and Analytics at Marriott. Marriott rhymes with chariot. It's not Marriott, I learned. He's the former head of HR data science at Intel. He's got a PhD in applied physics, which led to his initial roles as an R&D engineer. We first met in preparation for a panel I led at the Unleash conference focused on quality of hire back in 2024. I loved what he brought to that conversation as a practitioner and data scientist, and frankly, someone who nerds out on all things people analytics and automation and AI. Let's go. Tyler, welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here, John.
I'm excited you're here. So you and I met several years ago now, and we've developed, I would say, a bit of a friendship, and we both really geek out on things like quality of hire. You have a really strong analytics background, which I'm really excited to kind of share with the audience kind of how you're thinking about some things. Before we dive in, though, everyone has probably stayed at a Marriott in their life, but give us a little bit of background on just kind of size and scale and scope about this organization you work for now.
Yeah, it's funny. I've been with the company about 4 years, and what drew me to it, to the role, was that size and scale. And I really had no idea. I mean, we've got nearly 10,000 hotels worldwide. We're in 143 countries. We're getting close to about 1 million people worldwide that wear a Marriott badge every day. And, they're doing all kinds of jobs. Like, most of them are doing all kinds of jobs. Like, they're washing dishes and parking cars and working front desks and cleaning rooms. It's a big workforce that are doing a lot of things to make sure you've got a wonderful stay. But the number, I'll tell you, the thing that really put it into perspective for me, and I don't know why, but, and I haven't been able to confirm this, but I've heard this from a few different people. Apparently, we are the 4th largest restaurant chain in the world. And for some reason, being number 4 on that list made me go, oh, wow.
It's kind of surprising. Yeah, it's kind of surprising.
Yeah. So,
but the bottom line is you hire a ton of frontline hourly workers, nonstop, continuous.
Yep, all over the world. And and that group is from all over the world. Even in the United States, when we run a survey, I think we've got to translate into 40 languages just to kind of be able to address all of our associates. And it's a big melting pot of people, which is kind of fun.
Yes. You guys are in over 100 countries. You have a lot of franchises, which creates some interesting dynamics in kind of hiring. Right. And I was looking online, and it looks like, you guys are still in growth mode. It's hard to imagine that there's more hotels to put in more places, but I think I read something like maybe 700 new properties in the last year. So you've got seasonal hiring, you've got everyday hiring for existing properties, and you're growing, which creates a lot of probably opportunity. You look after not talent acquisition, Jessica and team look after TA, but you kind of own HR tech and people analytics globally for the company. And so I wanted to dive in a little bit right out of the gate into quality of hire. And you and I have had conversations about quality of hire, not just in preparation for this conversation, but other conversations we've had. We even got to share some really good tater tots in Portland, Oregon, where we met with another guy in our space, Steve Hunt, who also has a PhD and looks at this kind of stuff. I was the least educated person sharing tots in that conversation. But we were talking about some of the challenges with traditional ways of thinking about quality of hire. And I wanted to have you share a little bit about your thinking about assessments. And I know you think a lot about this. I'm sure you've built many assessments in your career. I'm sure done validation studies for these. But if I'm a TA leader and I'm thinking about, high volume frontline hiring, I can't put people on I'm not doing full, 1 hour behavioral interviews, obviously for most hourly jobs. So I'm thinking about assessments. What do most folks kind of underappreciate or misunderstand about assessments, and how are you thinking about assessments nowadays?
Yeah, I think the thing that like sort of shocks people, if you just dig into
Yeah.
the math, right? Like, so
Yeah.
I'm not an IO psychologist. That's like those are sort of the folks that are deep experts, and Steve is really kind of one of our friends who's very good at this.
Yes.
I love to bug him on, about this topic. Look, a good assessment, if you look at it, has about a zero point 0.2 correlation coefficient. That's like, if you're talking to an IO, they'll use the word validity, but it's about a zero point 0.2 to zero point 0.3. What that means mathematically is that it explains about 4% of the variance. Now, what so I'll flip that around. That means that over 90% of what differentiates a person that you hire, whether they're going to be good or bad, is not explained by that assessment.
Interesting.
So you aren't. It's not even like, oh, it's half. It gets, like
Right,
the 50,
right, right.
50. It's not even close. So an assessment really, and I know these are fighting words with all of my IO friends who I love very dearly.
Yeah.
An assessment will never help you find the person. It just won't. It doesn't work that way. What it does do is it helps improve the odds. So if you're hiring thousands of a role, like like we do with housekeepers and front desk folks, and we're hiring hundreds of thousands, that 5% matters, or that 4% really matters. That it's almost like, if you think about the odds in a casino, like they for the house to win, they don't have to win every hand. They just have to win some small percentage more than you.
Right.
Right. That's what assessments help you do. So they are great. They're great in volume. They don't do anything for you. Like, if I get to hire one person into this role, an assessment's probably not going to help you do it. So
yeah, and you and I talked a little bit about how there's this sense that, especially with AI, that we're going to have this opportunity to leverage technology and AI in this very predictive way. Like, we're going to use these assessments to tell us who's good and who's not. And I know, as a former practitioner who didn't do high volume hiring, by the way, but like when I was at Amazon leading all of our tech recruiting years ago, I found the best use for assessments, kind of to validate what you said, was not to help me identify who's great. It just kind of helped me get rid of the bottom third or bottom quarter or bottom 20%. And it was kind of, focused on basic deal breaker stuff that we would have covered in a phone screen with an engineer that's very expensive. And I could have just applied that so that we had a higher hit rate of kind of phone screen to interview rate. But you were saying that, it's not actually, you wouldn't spend a lot of time on using assessments to predict who's going to be perfect at a minimum.
Yeah, because I think some of that is fundamental. I don't think that it's a better assessment that's going to suddenly be more predictive. I think that the part of the challenge is that work is a team sport.
Yeah,
you're gonna have more than one person, and where people are particularly effective is how they work in a team. And there's some concepts out there that I find endlessly fascinating, that really explain kind of where teams excel. It's like the classic problem of, like, all-star teams in sports are never as good as championship teams. Why? They have all better players.
Right.
Every single player is better, right? So, like, but why aren't they the best? And that is true at work as well. And assessments, they are about you as an individual. Even if you're asking about how somebody operates in a team. So there a couple of these concepts, and we pre-gamed about a couple of these, John, but I love them so much. One is this idea of transactive memory. So there's a thing that happens that's just natural in our interaction with people around us in our daily lives, is we actually store information in other people's heads. So, like, you and your wife, like, there are things that you store in your wife's head that you don't actually ever remember, and your brain knows you don't need to remember because you know your wife knows that thing.
Because I just ask her. Right,
You're
right.
just going to ask her, and vice versa. And very healthy teams have a very high degree of transactive memory. And you've probably experienced this where, like, you're in a team that was just really firing on all cylinders. You guys were really crushing it. And everybody knew who to go ask for stuff. It's not that every person did everything perfectly. It's that you knew that, Susan knew how to do this thing and Greg knew how to do that thing. And everyone would go, oh, yeah, go talk to them. And like, it would just, like, things would just move.
Right.
Um, I think, and this is a long-winded answer, but I really think that the future is for teams that need to be very high functioning and highly creative and highly productive. It's going to be quality of hire would be less about, is this individual likely to be very productive at this company, as much as is this team able to repair, like if somebody leaves, your transactive memory is broken. How good are your teams at repairing that transactive memory? So a new person comes in and suddenly you're like really trying to figure out what to store in their head. Right? Like it sounds weird, but that's kind of what you're doing.
It's assimilating the new person, and it's finding a way to help them fit in and contribute to the team, which then contributes to the business. Because, people, I forgot who said it first, but some business guru, regularly said, all the great stuff we have is not just one person sat in a corner and boom, I just thought this amazing idea. It's iterative. It's usually groups. It's bouncing things back and forth, and it's finding people that complement the team, right? That makes the team great, not just which is a little bit of the money ball stuff, but it's a complement too, right? Not just an ideal candidate profile suggesting that you have this one single profile that you're going to run an assessment against, and that's going to be your great hire, may actually not be at all what the team needs.
That's right. If they come in and they blow up like the relationships and nobody trusts each other, nobody's talking, you could have hired the best software developer in the world and
whatever it is, right.
Like, and were they a good hire or not? Like,
right.
Probably not. And but like based on their assessment, based on their competency in programming, based on like the manager saying, yeah, I hired the best. I'm so good at this. The net effect might be that they were a terrible hire, right? So, and they stick around. Like, so all the ways that we typically measure quality of hires, did they stay? Did they perform well? Well, they might have performed well. They might have submitted more code than anyone else that year, and they might have stayed, but they made everybody else less productive. Not good.
Right.
So, like, I really think that this sort of, I think this sort of focus on team output, team cohesion, team concepts like transactive memory or, collective intelligence, which is another one of like the sort of IQ of a team is not the average of the IQs of the team members. It's sort of a function of how they share information and how they collaborate and those kind of communication patterns.
Very few, I have never heard anyone talk about this. I've heard of collective intelligence, of course, and power of teams, but the way you're framing it. So if I'm a TA leader listening to this and I'm focused on, frontline hiring at my organization, and I want to maybe change the conversation away from a classic kind of, I've got this, this persona or these 3 ideal candidate profiles, and I'm trying to use assessment to find the perfect individual contributor for my company, to more of this collective intelligence and thinking about the transactive memory and just how teams make the world go around and really produce the outcomes for the business. Where do I start, and how would I measure something like this? And are you on this journey now? Are you already doing some of this, and anything to learn?
Yeah, we've done some really interesting work with our front line as well. This is not just for software developers, and a lot of the narrative out there are for sort of like, software companies make all the software, right? So we know a lot about them because we have tools that are good at measuring them. one of the things that we've been doing over the last several years is experimenting with redefining work at the front line, right?
Okay.
So traditionally, you'd have these kind of very siloed roles. Like you have like you might walk into a hotel, there's like three people standing there. There's only one person that checks people in, and you're not sure as a
Right.
guest like what the other
Right.
two people do, but like there's a
Right.
line and they're not help like I guess they don't help us. Like there's sort of this like, well, what do
Yes.
they do?
Deep specialization. Yeah.
Deep
Yeah.
specialization, right? And we've really been trying to break down those barriers and allow a lot more flexibility at the hotel for the associates to tackle lots of different types of problems. Because the goal, the mission is to serve the guests, right? Like we want people to come into our hotels and have an amazing experience and feel hospitality means that we want people to feel taken care of, right? It's a craft. It's you know it's more than just customer service. It's like that thing that you feel sometimes when you go to a place and you're like, man, like they really just took care of me.
Yeah.
Um, that requires actually quite a bit of creativity and quite a bit of collaboration, and we want like all those sort of like the productivity and the things that I was just talking about. So by breaking down some of those silos so that people can do multiple roles, um, we actually are creating an environment where there's more opportunity for them to operate with some of that team cohesion. Like somebody can
Mm.
pick up, a guest that you're not able to get to because you've got you've got multiple people that can handle those things. And what's interesting is that at where we've done this with these types of roles, we see that our guests are more satisfied with their
Yeah.
stay, and our associates are a bit more satisfied with work, and we actually start to see some improvements in costs, like we have fewer overtime costs and things. So there's some practical improvements. But yeah, like and as
So in that context, though, Tyler, when you're thinking about kind of quality of hire, are you shifting the information you're collecting then to determine if someone is going to be effective in that more of a generalist role where it's more about the team? Is it changing how you're thinking about
that
not just theoretically thinking about quality of hire, but like practically speaking, are you doing something different as a result of
that's where
this
that's
shift?
where I would love to go. Transparently, that's where I
Okay.
want to go. I mean, we've got a
Yeah.
big
Yeah.
ship, and there's a lot of properties and a lot of people that are doing an amazing work to like with our
Yeah.
guests. And making those changes takes some time, but ultimately, that's absolutely what I want us to be doing. Is like as we break more and more of these barriers down, and we rethink how work is done at the hotel.
Right.
How do we then rethink how like what does a good hire mean, right? And
Yeah.
in some places, like your chef, part of that still is they should be able to make a killer omelet, right? Like
Right.
you're never going to take that piece out, but like what else do they contribute to the what do they bring to the team is like,
Right.
and we're talking a lot more in how we run performance management and how we do manage other parts of our talent strategy of like how do you really kind of elevate people to think about the team, not just my
Right.
thing I need to do. So yeah, it's starting to kind of like
I've done some
move
work. I've
into
done some work with my team as consultants. We've worked with hundreds of companies all over the place, and a big focus for us has been helping companies define their hiring bar, kind of at the federal level, kind of cross company, but really focused on how do you improve the quality of hiring decision. And what you're saying really speaks to me because I think there's a kind of common way of thinking about a good hiring decision as will this person be able to kind of hit the ground running doing this specific role? And I think as you get more mature as an organization, you start to think about them less as just a specialist and more as a generalist, less as just an individual contributor, even if they're not a manager, and more of a complement to a team, right? And you
yeah
start to think even more about their potential versus just what they can do right now for you. And I think this is on this kind of spectrum where you kind of, as you get more sophisticated in your hiring decisions, you recognize that the companies that hire amazing talent that sticks around for a long time and frankly contributes a lot more than their salary to the organization, those are the ones that where when you're making that kind of decision, they are higher potential. You are hiring them for their some generalist capabilities or even just generalist interest, and you are making a decision that has got a longer term orientation than just, can they jump in right now and do this specific thing? You're thinking about the team and how they're going to maybe even elevate the whole team, right?
That's right. And it's interesting. Like if you go to like if you have the chance to go to Ritz Carlton, right, and sort of experience what that's like. There's a concept that I love that I was sort of introduced to when I joined Marriott around called anticipatory service, right? It's a thing that they're trained on. It's a thing that they look for when they hire people, and it goes way above and beyond just like, did I answer somebody's question well? It's like anticipating what they're going to need and like sort of seeing that. And like, I'll get stories from people that are like, oh, you work for Marriott? Oh, I stayed at a Ritz Carlton and I got in late and my kid was sick and the front desk person took us to our room and then came back an hour later and had, I don't know, like making this one up, but they had a toy for my kid to play with and it made them feel better. And like, oh, that was amazing. Like that, like,
yeah,
that's a totally different thing. That does take that's sort of thinking like you're saying about the goal, not just like my task. So,
yeah, right.
Yeah.
I'm going to quote you back to you. You said something really interesting when we first met. You said quality of hire puts all of the burden on the candidate to be great. And you said that's not really fair. What did you mean by that?
What I meant by that is like, again, you're sort of expecting them to shoulder, like, 90% of your experience, like you can go look at it, if anyone's listening to this that has access to your engagement surveys, like, I can say that when we look at our engagement surveys, the number one thing that modulates somebody's experience, it does not matter what it is. Like, for everybody, like when they get the question about pay, that's always the lowest question at every company because everyone wants to get paid more. It doesn't matter how much you're making, they want to get paid more. So they're like, I'm going to rate low on this one.
Yeah, someone's going to listen to this and they're going to give us more money.
They all think they're being clever, but you all do it. Everyone does it.
Yeah.
So even that, though, is rated higher when somebody likes their manager. Like the manager has such an outsized impact on your experience at work that even the famously lowest response question, you rate a little higher if you like your manager. So the problem with quality of hire is that, if you have a manager who just does not onboard somebody, who does not do a great job at like integrating them into the team and sort of helping that team rebuild that transactive memory and sort of start operating as a unit, and this person is like active in that team, are you like, yeah, they both share responsibility and that person's, it's a shared responsibility. And I would say that as the incumbent and as the manager, like really, like it's your job as the manager to make sure your team rebuilds that dynamic. And if that doesn't happen, and so the person leaves in the first year, or they never quite start performing, like I think, the traditional quality of hire to me is more like quality of manager measurement. But
this feeds into part two, what we talked about, because I look at a lot of data and insights as a consultant, and I'm mostly looking at what TA leaders are using in their quarterly business reviews when engaging directly with, a VP level leader in the business, right? And it's interesting because I will see 1 out of 4 times I'll see quality of hire being tracked at all. Like, maybe 1 out of 4 times they're willing to put something together. And of those 25% where I see that in something that's going to the business, 80% of the weighting is typically some kind of hiring manager survey, right? It's kind of you've just made the hire, Tyler. Here's your survey. And it's captured. It's a very subjective thing. First of all, surveys anyways. But it's captured in a way that then ends up with this kind of numerical average, kind of like an NPS kind of rating kind of vibe on these quality things. And there's a bit of I'm not trying to be negative here, but there's a bit of a self-congratulatory, like, we're kicking ass in TA because our hiring manager satisfaction surveys are, 8.2 out of 10. And that's up from 8.1 last quarter. And so we're definitely hiring better people. Like, this is great.
Yeah.
What is the problem with that kind of mechanism, the hiring manager survey?
Yeah, I mean, this is one of my favorite ones because it's always like around 90%. Like 9 out of 10 managers are very willing to tell you that they make very good decisions, right? It's just sort of like very, like, to your point, it's like the most self-congratulatory question you could ask somebody. Um, and so it doesn't usually harbor a lot of information. And if you try to go run an experiment, if you try to go, okay, we want to improve this, I'll bet that you might statistically get some variation where it goes up, like you said, 0.1, but it might come back down the next quarter. Like, that's probably random noise. It's probably just, and I've just never seen. It's kind of like offer accept rates. It's one that people love to zone in on and use for all kinds of things. But for most people, they're around 85%, 90% for almost everybody, and they don't really move. And so now, obviously if there's like wild outliers, there could be a problem with your compensation. But people are looking for, a percent on a percent. And by the time you get somebody all the way to offer, you're typically there because you know what they're going to say. It's just a silly, I think we just sort of ascribe too much meaning to what that is.
And it is interesting because, it's kind of, I know you were saying earlier, a couple of years ago when we first met that, hiring manager surveys are kind of asking the hiring manager, are you good at making decisions?
Right.
And the answer is going to be, well, yes, especially if HR is asking me this and recording this somewhere. I am fantastic at making decisions. I don't have an incentive to disparage my decision-making ability by saying, I don't think this was a good hire if I'm the one that made the hire. Now, if HR hires people for you, like we have some clients where they realized, hey, HR is as good or better than a quote hiring manager, or there is no hiring manager in some frontline hiring. Sure. For example, we had a client doing a bunch of stuff around, cruise ship staffing, and they just said, we just took over hiring for all those roles. There's no one hiring manager. So you're not going to survey a hiring manager and say, did you hire a good person? You're going to say, do you have the quality of talent you need? And that might be a little bit more reflective of something you could use. But a traditional hiring manager survey can come off like, are you good at your job?
Yeah.
Well,
scale of 1 to 10, how awesome are you?
Yeah, exactly.
What I will say, though, is if you want to get some validity out of that, the thing to really go after is behaviors. Don't ask the hiring manager something really vague like, how good of a hire is this? Because I've seen those kinds of questions. It's, how often does this hire do X? How often have they done Y?
Have you observed them doing this thing?
It's observable behaviors that you as an organization have defined as, or sort of identified as, evidence of a strong hire, right? And I think
but it's much easier for me to just say, would you rehire this person, yes or no, and put all of my weight into that.
That's the same thing. As well.
Right. I mean, but that requires a lot more work. And I've been doing some research when we did a prep Zoom for this conversation. I told you I'm working on a new workshop around quality of hire for TA leaders, and it's really interesting to me how important it is to get role specific when you're doing quality of hire work. And sometimes there's enough variation. Like we had I was in Australia a few months ago, and I got some TA leaders together, and one of the TA leaders was talking about putting together this fairly complicated quality of hire formula. And one of the things she talked about was looking at kind of mobility. How likely do we think this person is to move up a level within 6 months or a year or whatever the promotion period was? And then how often did they actually do that, and trying to, draw some connection as part of this, 6-factor formula to measure quality of hire. And it's so interesting when you start even getting role specific with something like that, you still have to make sure there's the headroom for them to get promoted, because some teams are a 6-person team with a director, and
that has nothing to do.
Director who's not leaving, and so no one's going to get that job. And then other teams, there's there's really easy kind of well laid out paths from a level 1 to a level 2 to a level 3 where you don't have to have someone
Yeah.
die or retire to create the opening, right? And so I see a lot of people trying to do some more quantifiable stuff, but you really have to get specific, don't you, into the role and the org and
And the
the
team,
geography and
it's like the team, and by the way, like if you add promo rates into it, like if you have out of control turnover, you're going to have a lot of promos because you're going to have a lot of
yeah,
opportunity created. So like that's not even that might just be evidence that you have an unhealthy org. Like that might,
right. Not
again,
not that you're awesome, right?
might tell you nothing about that hire.
Right, right. I
So
want to ask you about AI, and I know you have access to just massive data at Marriott, given the volume of hires. But you and I were talking a little bit about how AI can help us capture data to evaluate things like productivity and looking at kind of how you can make whatever person's job, help them be more productive in their job. And you were talking about some experiments you were doing on your own team. And I wondered if you'd just walk us through a little bit about
yeah,
how you were thinking about deploying AI to not just think about quality of hire potentially, but kind of make people more productive and maybe even happier in their job. Talk to me about what you were doing.
yeah. Look, I think uh, I've been on this sort of like stump speech for a few months now, where I really think that the biggest impact AI might have on the org might not be automation. It might be measurement. And I really think that this is we're at this sort of amazing point in our history where we actually have much deeper visibility into the org than we've ever had in a way that could be like still sort of not, or it may not violate senses of privacy or sort of like be big brothery. Like your enterprise LLM has a tremendous amount of information about what people are doing and what they're talking about and how they're doing it, and it remembers it. Like if you were to go in, like like if you have Copilot or whatever, and just ask it like, who are my top 10 collaborators and what do I work on with them? It'll give you a pretty good list. That is what we call an organizational network analysis. And that historically has been a very expensive, a lot of work, very hard to put together. And there's no, like, it provides insight, but it's hard to do that kind of all the time or have that be always on. Suddenly it is. It is always on. It is running right now. And it is like there's a graph database of all
Yeah.
the things that everybody is talking about at your company that is being populated by their interactions with that LLM. And that to me is the most fascinating thing. And I think where there's huge opportunity. So we ran
Because a lot of leaders are making assumptions around
yep,
why someone is more productive or
yep,
dependencies, this before that, order of operations. We can't do this here. We have to do that first. And
that's
what
right.
you can do is you can actually analyze not just kind of on paper a process, but how are people actually getting their work done? And you might be surprised by what
That's
they're
right.
doing and what the top performers are doing differently than the average performer.
That's right. That's right. So typically, and you would do this with a survey. You would ask managers, what does your team do?" Right, and then
Right.
like you're sort of beholden to not only what they know, but also what they want to tell you. Right, like like people aren't. There's a conflict of interest between what the manager wants to preserve and what you as a company might be trying to accomplish. So we ran a very simple experiment where we ran a survey on my team, but it wasn't to you as a person. We sent you a prompt to run in your Copilot, and then your response to the survey was the output from the Copilot, right? So, and it was voluntary. Not everybody participated or wanted to participate, but we got enough people from the team to respond. Then we told them everything we were doing, right? So, and we shared the results with them. But like we took all those. It was like it was a fairly it was a structured prompt that kind of asked them about the top 5 people they work with on a weekly basis, about the biggest projects and processes they support and how they support them and who, like, And so it generated a lot of output that they could review and edit, based on however they wanted to correct it. We didn't put any guidance over that. And then we pulled all that together into a graph, and then we started to interrogate, well, what processes are we supporting? It was so fascinating. We were actually able to reconstruct some of our processes of how we support our comp team and how we support our TA team, and see actually handoffs. Like, oh, this person goes to this meeting every week where then they send these emails to this person, or this approval process requires um, this person to go talk to this person. Like, we were actually able to do not just process mining, but process mapping.
So Tyler, one of the things that we talked a little bit about in prep for this was how AI and data can be used to kind of help us evaluate not just is someone going to be a good quality hire, but improve productivity once they're hired. And obviously there's all kinds of tools and technology that people have deployed that are identifying where, how someone does something today with the hopes of maybe improving their output, right? You've actually done some experiments with this on your own team. Talk to us about what you're doing and how that generally fits into the world of, we're all in the business of helping the business win. It's not just about
Yeah.
randomly, tweaking an HR process. It's about, creating better outcomes.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like, I one of the things that I'm most excited about with AI is how much it knows. And I do think that it's the biggest impact AI might have on the enterprise is not automation. I think it's actually going to be measurement. Um, and you can go do a simple experiment yourself, right? If you're at a company that's provided you with Copilot or something else, just go ask it who your top 10 collaborators are and what you work on with them. It knows. It's tracking that, and you don't feel creeped out by that, which is really interesting because it means the social contract around what information is stored is evolving. And like, you always want to be very careful about not tiptoeing across the line from service to surveillance with like all the best intentions, right?
Right,
Like,
right,
and so we're very careful about that. But we do want to understand, like, what can this amazing measurement tool provide us
right.
in that sense. And historically, like, you would go run surveys, and managers, the incentive of a manager to answer a survey about their team isn't necessarily aligned with the company, right? Like, they're often trying to protect resources, or they're trying to sort of protect their team, and so they're not necessarily forthright with how people do work and how much time it takes them. And even if they're trying to be forthright, there's a bias there on like
Sure, sure.
how they're going to report that. So this is actually pretty incredible that we can do this. So the experiment we ran is we ran a survey, um, but we didn't send the people on the team a survey. So this was totally voluntary. Anybody could do it. We didn't. Not everyone responded, which was totally fine. We sent them a prompt to run in their Copilot, and their response to the survey was just to send us the response of the from the LLM. So it was a survey for the
Okay.
AI. And we gave all the details of what we were doing, and showed that, like, they were able to edit their results. Like, we didn't even tell them they could, like, please, if there's something wrong, like,
Yeah.
make sure that
And
you're
what kind of things were
comfortable
you
with whatever
asking?
this.
What were you wanting to understand?
And we were asking the questions like that, like, who are the top 5 people you work with,
Yeah.
and what are the sort of the big projects that you're supporting right now, and what's sort of the regular business as usual work that you support, and how much of your time is it, and like, just things that you would ask a person if you were trying to
Sure.
understand their workload. Like, it was just those questions, nothing about performance, nothing about like effectiveness, just
Yeah.
how do
What's
you do your
happening?
job?
How's it happening? Right.
Like,
Yeah.
how do you do your job,
Right.
right? And we took the responses we got, we went and we put those in a graph database, and then we started to interrogate it to understand it, to see if we could sort of identify processes, like how, like, not the process as you have it documented in your policies or your SOPs somewhere, but how people actually do things, right? Like, and it was amazing. We were able to actually piece together some of our like, like processes around how we support our comp team or our TA team. And oh, okay, so this person goes to this like specific meetings. Okay, so like these people go to this meeting once a week. Out of that meeting, then there's a document that's produced, and then an email is sent to this person, and then approval is given,
Right.
right? Like, whereas the process might be get approval, but like really, there's all this like meeting
Right.
and communication traffic
And
and
now
all
you can
that
see
burden.
bottlenecks and dependencies
Right.
and what happens
That's
if this
right.
person doesn't respond right away? What are the kind of trickle down effects?
Yes, it just like came, it's just like bloop, like this just like
Right.
amazing process mapping or mining thing that like can help us see how the team's actually working. And I know your the TA space is sort of your passion, and I can only imagine what we could learn if we applied this to like the offer
Right.
process, right? Like
Right.
I was in TA years ago, and I done some work analysis in TA, and that is like everywhere. The most like people always want to automate offer, but man, it is like a rat's nest of approvals and back approvals and checking and exceptions, and like there's like the thing on paper, and then there's the 8 people that actually need to approve it,
Right.
right? And it can see all that because you're using those communication channels to actually navigate the offer. So how do you actually improve that process? It's all in there, and that is why I think like you can't automate a thing you don't understand, and it's going to help us understand that. So
I gave a challenge on the offer note. I gave a challenge to a group of TA leaders. I said, what would it take for you to basically do same day offers at scale, same day or instant offers, basically? And I know for frontline, it's very common to hire on the spot if you're doing
sure.
something, but these were not frontline roles. But it's interesting to think about what you can learn from frontline in university and executive recruiting and tech and sales, and or hourly or union or non-union. There's just all these different things that exist in the world of talent acquisition where you have these differences, and you start to ask yourself, why is this so different? Like what makes it different, right? And this is where when you start analyzing process, you realize, when someone says we could never do same day offers, but you say, well, we do it all the time for hourly hires, or we do it all the
Right.
time for university hires, and those are 80K a year jobs. So it's not just around salary. Like what is it that prevents us from doing same day offers to folks? And maybe it's background checks and it's a delay, or whatever the thing is. But what I'm hearing you share, Tyler, is that through some of this analysis that's a lot easier to do now, we can now identify and maybe have a bit of a rebuttal to the person that is kind of the blocker to keeping us from doing something that helps us get more speed and quality of hire. Because same day offers, good or bad, for the candidate, I think most candidates would like that. They don't want the pressure of, if I give you this today, you have to decide by midnight or something, if there's like a
Right.
relocation
Right.
involved, or they might need a little time to think about it. But generally speaking, you're going to get a little higher share of quality talent if you can move faster. And so you'd want to think everyone's on board with this, but it's hard to have data. You can't really A/B test this as easily, and you have to be fair around the way you do all this. So I love the idea of leveraging AI to take a look at what is actually happening on the ground every day in the real world, not on paper, not what someone would respond in a survey where they think that's like a compliance check. This is actually looking at it and evaluating what, how, who, and then we can really have conversations around the why now. Why are we even doing this step, right?
That's right. That's right. And that question, that's such a good one. What would it take to do a same day offer? That's the type of question you could actually ask if you had like man, go run this kind of survey like experiment with
Right, right.
I mean, even your executive recruit, like with a pod of recruiters, and see what you get out of that. I'm sure there is a thing there where like I don't know, like maybe there's some sort of policy or maybe understood policy that the manager of that recruiting team has to approve them all, and
Right.
like the same manager is like the one asking how do we get the same day offer, and it turns out that they're the bottleneck. Like you might find that you're the problem.
Right, right, right.
Like,
Absolutely.
and like and you would never, like, nobody's going to tell you that, right? Like, so I think there's an objectivity here that is very
Yeah.
tantalizing from a measurement approach. So yeah.
I want to talk about people analytics as a bit of a function, because I think you are best known in the people analytics space. You have a Substack that I have read several of your 19-page Wired magazine style articles with graphs. They're not short, but they're not a book, and you really do a good job as kind of an educator and sharing transparently kind of experiments you do. But you said something once to me that said, you think the people analytics function is kind of doing a disservice by promising prediction of the future. And it's funny when you said that, because I thought, well, that's the whole reason to have people analytics, is not just to look at lagging stuff, but be able to bring insights that help us plan better, right? And you were saying maybe not. So tell me about that, because that seems like an interesting, assuming I've captured your point of view correctly, that it's not. So tell me about that.
I do think, I mean, like there's a lot of these things that like aren't predictable. Not because like we don't have a good enough tool. No AI, no matter how powerful, can predict certain things, because as a physical system, they are chaotic. And I mean that you can go look up what chaos means mathematically, but like they are a chaotic system, or they are a complex system in that, and they aren't deterministic. And one of the most famous things like this is the stock market. You actually cannot predict the stock market. It is not a thing. Like, no matter how good your AI, you just will never do it, because it's not predictable. And so I think we've done ourselves a disservice, because even in strategic workforce planning, I like to kind of pick on this one. Like, the first step, if you go Google strategic workforce planning right now, the first step you'll probably get is look 5 years down the road. Oh yeah, okay, sure. Yeah, if I knew what my business was going to be like in 5 years down the road, I can make way better decisions than all of my competitors. That's like okay, cool. I'd like a hoverboard too, and I would like,
right.
As long as you're Biff from Back to the Future 2 and you have all of the sports stats from 20 years from now, you can make all the best bets.
Right.
It's like kind of a silly premise to begin work on.
And I'll validate that, because we teach TA leaders how to lead effective QBRs. And the more we understand about where the business is going, the more proactive and reactive we can be today. The challenge isn't so much, can we build the pipelines to deliver the talent you're going to need? It's, what's the talent you're going to need a lot, right?
What, like that question?
But we can't be the victims either, right, Tyler? We can't just be like, if you can't give me an exact number by geography, how many, by level, but I call bullshit on that a little bit. Like, of course, that's unrealistic to expect to have all that perfect information, because welcome to TA, welcome to the real world. You're never going to have all that. But that wasn't your point, that you shouldn't try to predict some things, right?
It's not about not trying. I think when we use the word prediction, I think we're actually using the wrong word.
Okay.
I think what we're looking for relationships. We're looking for causal relationships. If I do this, what happens on this end? I mean, I'm a physicist, so this is how I think about things. That is, sure, that's like prediction. Like, I know that if I throw this rock, it's going to follow an arc that's defined by, the gravitational constant and some
wind resistance and
wind resistance, and like I can put together, like, the more factors I pull in, the more accurate I can get about where it's going to land, right? Yes, but that's not prediction in the sense. That's what I have is a series of relationships, and I know that if I pull those relationships together, roughly which direction or what outcome I can expect. Identifying causal relationships, I think that is the thing that we are looking for.
Yeah.
And I think that's, if you start to kind of look at these from a lens, like, then you might change how you look at things like assessments, because you have a correlation between this assessment and somebody's performance, but not necessarily a cause. Like, you don't really understand cause. You can't you're actually not predicting very well. It's 90%, 9 out of 10 the things you didn't measure. So
but you do still AI in analyzing the data. Obviously, you're in the people analytics space, and I know one of the things we talked about that you mentioned, just kind of the diagnostic capabilities, right? Which kind of then gets into causal stuff, right? Those two things are connected in your mind?
Yeah, they are kind of connected. Like what causes this thing? What is the like what is the physics of the organization? Like what happens that results in these types of outcomes? Because then I can avoid those, or I can double down on those, or like the classic examples in any stats book is like how much do I spend on how many marketing dollars get me how much sales, right?
Right.
Like that is not a prediction in the sense of what's going to happen in 18 months from now. That is understanding a causal
Yeah.
relationship. And that is the thing that's powerful. And that's not actually prediction in like the way that we think about it. What's going to happen 18 months from now? I don't know. An earthquake.
Yeah.
Like maybe ChatGPT will get released. Like that you don't know.
Yeah.
And so like you can do some forecasting, you can do some extrapolation sometimes. You can kind of look out and go, okay, if we were to follow this trend, here's what it would look like. But what I have found with leaders, the more powerful thing than trying to predict is to provide tools that allow for scenario planning. In this type of scenario, what happens?
Yeah.
So map out scenarios, and those become kind of your boundary conditions. Like, oh man, like if we end up in this area, this is the type of thing we should do if we end up going this
Right.
direction. This is the type of thing we should do if we end up going in that direction. There's a fork in the road. We like, and kind of some scenarios end up going this way, some scenarios end up going that. That's like, now you're talking about Monte Carlo simulations and like there's ways to go look at how do I respond to certain events, but you aren't going to predict those events
Yeah.
like that. That's a
Lower your
fool's errand, and it's a
expectations,
thing.
in other words,
We
yeah.
we as an industry have shot ourselves in the foot a bit by promising that we could do that.
Yeah. I was at a venture capital conference thing a few weeks ago, and there were a bunch of really senior, product leaders from big HR tech companies. Adam, the CEO of or former CEO of Paradox, now the GM of kind of all the recruiting products at Workday, was there, and there was a concept that was interesting to me that I hadn't heard framed this way, but it was about headless software.
Mm.
And one of the things that I took away from this conversation, which we've experienced already with tools like Paradox, where a candidate who applies to a job doesn't log into Workday to apply to the job or something. They just start engaging through chat. And the idea of headless software, as I understood it, again, new term but familiar concept, was there's going to be all kinds of tools that just kind of live within the applications you're using every day, where you're not really logging into something new, but you got to do an interview reschedule because the candidate has an issue on Tuesday. It's going to ping you in Slack or Teams or email or chat or WhatsApp and say, hey, can we redo this? And you're not going to realize you're really talking to, in that case, Paradox or something. But this was the framing of this from a lot of these HR tech leaders and founders and startup folks was that's going to be a lot of the future of AI, is we're not going to have all these systems maybe to log into. You and I were talking a little bit about this, and you were looking at it more from an analytics perspective, because I'd mentioned, is there going to be a day where you don't really have to know how to, build a dashboard or build a report? You're just going to conversationally say, hey, Olivia, why am I having a hard time finding, housekeepers in Austin, Texas, right now? What's
Right.
going on? And it's just going to generate all the stuff. And then I say, hey, I got to go report on this to my boss. Give me something I can do. And you were saying that there's a potential problem with headless software, kind of replacing a dashboard. Talk to me about that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, the problem with headless software is that if it doesn't have a head, it doesn't have an opinion. And I think uh, and these are probably fighting words. Adam, you can come fight me. Um, I love Adam. We go back a bit too. So look, I think that's tremendously valuable in every use case you just
Yeah.
outlined. The person doing the work already knew what they needed. They're like, I need this. So yeah, that is way more efficient to not have to navigate a menu and just go, hey, help me, blah 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 blah.
Yeah.
The problem is that for most users of enterprise software, I have things that I need them to know about or
Mm.
to think about things that they never thought of, and that even this The smartest person in the world can never build a list of things they didn't think of. So like just like when you walk into a grocery store or you go to a consumer website, there is stuff that is placed purposely to sort of prompt you to think, oh, hey, did you think about this?
Right.
Right? Analytics is very much like that. Yes, people have questions, and when they have a specific question, of course, that'd be great. Like how many people got hired last month? Easy. But there's a lot that like leaders don't know to ask or didn't think of to ask, but would be really helpful for them to sort of be prompted with. So no, I don't think that UIs are going away, right? Like there is always going to be a place for smart teams, whether it's someone running an analytics team or running a TA team or a comp team, that when leaders are going in to interact with their internal product, you are going to want real estate on that page to help them sort of prompt them to think about the thing that you
Right.
want them to think
Right.
about. And I that's just not going away, right? And so it's it's a little bit of both. And yeah, there's some very ambitious folks out there that want to just like make everything just like one bar, and just go talk to it. But like I don't like I don't want that. I like I like the radio because there's things on there that I wouldn't have chosen to listen to, and that's how you find new music,
Right. Right. Right.
right? So
It's kind of like it's kind of like search versus browse, right? And I
right,
worked at early Amazon, and we had teams dedicated to search and we had teams dedicated to browse. And when I've talked to folks that are building AI software, I think it's really tempting to just focus in on the ability now for users to kind of get to just have that single box, right? Just a prompt like Google search homepage, right? Just has the box,
right,
right? They don't, whereas Yahoo in the days, I haven't been on Yahoo in a while, but Yahoo in the days had so much stuff on the page, right? There was a lot of, and
right,
Amazon too, there was experimentation at times, I know with Amazon, where it's just like, maybe we should just give people like the equivalent of a Google search bar. But how much revenue does Amazon miss out on if they're not pushing stuff, right? If it's all pull, if it's I only know what I'm
that's
looking
right,
for and I don't upsell you on the batteries that go with this thing you're buying, or the lamp that complements the table, or whatever the thing is, the milk that goes with the cereal, that's missed revenue. And in our context, we're not talking about selling, but it is interesting because there is information that when I see it, I have a reaction to, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so glad someone told me this.
yeah,
I didn't realize this. Or even like a good HRIS analyst, when I was the head of TA at Expedia, this woman, Kelly, who didn't report to me, but was a fantastic partner, I would go to her and I'd say, I have a meeting tomorrow at 2 p.m. with the VP of, whatever, and I need a report on X. And she would grill me for 5 minutes to make
yeah,
sure that what I was asking for is what I actually needed. And if I appreciated the complexities, and then started suggesting other things that I should bring to the conversation. And I think about, as kind of an analog to what you're talking about, Kelly was the browse. Kelly was the one who was, who was helping me think through what
I
I
love it.
actually needed, but presenting me with stuff like, I don't know if you know, we already have a report. The executives have been seeing this report for 3 months. If you go in with something different than that, that's gonna derail your conversation, or whatever the thing was, right? And it was so helpful, and she was worth so much more than whatever the company was paying her, because she was actually preventing me from wasting time on stuff that just gave me a narrow slice of the bigger, whatever the bigger issue was. Does that make sense?
Yo, man, you just described the perfect behavior for an analytics person. Like that is the exact
Right.
thing that I love
It's the
every analytics
consultant.
person.
It's not just the report generator, right?
That's right. That's right. And I'll just like one last tidbit on this is like there's also sort of a misguided idea that like enterprise software like to treat employees like consumers.
Yeah.
And I think that that's valuable in the sense of the quality of experience you want to provide, but I think it's actually it actually sort of it's counter to what you actually want to
Hmm.
accomplish. So like in the consumer world, you really want to get hyper personalization. You want to sort of like really drill into John and John's preferences and what's going to drive John to you know to validate John and like feel good about John and he's going to go buy this thing. At a company, you're trying to get everybody to actually it's like the opposite. you don't want a hyper personalized everything. Like you want everybody aligning to one vision
Right.
and agreeing on a direction and all rowing in time and everybody operating again. That's not hyper personalization.
Right.
That's the opposite.
Right.
And so you don't like that, like you do need to prompt people a lot if you want them all understanding the company in the same way, like not living in these little filter bubbles of like, oh, I think our company is this. You need them to understand that like maybe they're like they haven't completed, like, oh man, you've only got 50% completion of your training for your organization. They weren't going to go ask that.
Right. 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 Right.
So like I need you to do this thing.
And the
So
classic example, I've had so many clients where it's like recruiting is broken, right? And everyone's fixated on recruiting and how we hire more, particularly in the hourly frontline space. You know, we got,
yeah.
we're hiring 1,000 people or 5,000 people or 20,000 people, and we're just not hiring fast enough. And people are not having a more holistic conversation around why people are quitting and why
Right,
people don't want
right,
these shifts, and why, the root issue of not having a bus line that goes to that location is the reason we can't hire in that location. And that, why did we even pick that like there's so much more complexity when you start digging into it. And to your point, someone may not be typing that into the single kind of chat GPT box or Copilot box to get at that.
right.
We need to push that at them.
That's right.
So
That's right.
so
That's right.
I want to ask you one final thing, which was, if I want to get smarter, if I'm a TA leader listening to this and I want to get smarter about people analytics, not just in the hourly space, but especially in the hourly space, what should I do? I can read some of your stuff on Substack for sure. I can find you on Substack, Tyler. Who
Uh-huh.
else do you recommend, and what other resources to help me get smarter about this?
Yeah. So there's a few folks out there that I love to
Yeah.
read, right? So Cole Napper and Directionally Correct, I think, is a great one, right?
Okay.
Like he's got an amazing book on people analytics and really just high quality guests on his podcast. So he's one of my favorites. Um, Colby Kennedy Nesbitt, we just put out an article this week
Okay.
together. She's a lot of fun. She's got a deep background in actually sports
Okay.
stats, and I believe her husband's a sports writer. So she's a lot of fun because she kind of brings, if sports speaks to you, like she kind of brings
Okay.
this angle that I think is a lot of fun to read. I love Steve Hunt, that we both know. Um, oh man,
I met
there's so
Alexis
many.
Fink a few weeks ago.
And Alexis, oh, can't forget Alexis Fink. Alexis is like, I joked with her on her podcast that she's like the people analytics doula. She just like brings so many. She kind of helped me into this world,
Yes.
and like, she's brilliant. And I would just sort of highly recommend
That's great.
just sort of sampling some of the work of folks in this space. Man, I feel bad because
You're
there's
going to
so
leave
many I
someone
love.
out and you're going to get in trouble.
You put me on the spot.
Yeah,
And there's
yeah,
like
yeah.
20 more.
It's all good. It's all good. It's good. It's good to get a sample of this. I will throw one thing out. I read a book. I think it was last summer called How to Decide, and it's by a woman named Annie Duke. And Annie was, I believe, the first female winner of the World Series of Poker Championship. And she went to get, I think she got PhD level background, and has a really interesting book that just kind of breaks down different decision-making models. But one of the things she talked about, Tyler, that I'll wrap on for this conversation, was she talked about this idea that one of the things that we hyper focus on, at least in kind of capitalist business culture, is the quality of a decision is directly connected to the quality of the outcome. And she said there's a problem in this kind of thinking. She said there are many times when you made the right decision and you didn't get the outcome that you expected or wanted. And that doesn't mean it was the wrong decision. And I think a lot about that in the context of hiring. Sometimes we do all the right things. You source the right person, you screen them the right way, you whatever. And then back to one of the things you said earlier, which is sometimes it's not the candidate's fault they weren't a wild success. It's all these other factors. We did all the things in our control to kind of predict success, and we hired someone that should have been a success, but life happens, things happen, managers happen, teams lose someone critical, or the company changes direction, or all these other factors. And I feel like it's kind of a freeing concept for life decisions, but also in a TA context, to realize we're in the business of making a lot of decisions that impact people, and we need to do our best, and we need to have rigor around quality decision making for sure. But not every quality decision leads to a quality outcome or the right outcome, the predicted outcome.
I love that. I have my own version of that, which is it's a little bit different, but I really like that Annie Duke version. Annie, is that what you said?
Annie Duke, yeah, yeah.
Uh, my version of that is and I tell my kids this, and I use this with my teams. There's almost no such thing as a bad decision, but there are a lot of poorly executed ones. And it's kind of the same. Like in other words, like worry. You almost don't need to worry about is this a good or bad decision, but whatever you do, commit to it. Like go make it the right. Like the way that you execute it is going to make it retroactively, whether it was right or wrong thing to do. Yeah. Like we just get paralyzed. Like, am I making the right one? Right. But I think hers is a good corollary to that. It's like, even if you did make the right one, it doesn't mean you get the right outcome.
Right.
Like
and when you look back, it's important to say, I could have done all the right things and this just didn't work out. It just wasn't, there's chaos. As you said, there's the chaos in the world and I can't predict everything. And there you go. Right.
That's right. Awesome. That's right.
Well, Tyler, this has been amazing. Thank you so much for making time for this. I really appreciate your insights. And I will say, you set a high bar, because when I talk to you, I feel like there's a real point of view backed up by, really credible experiences and education and expertise. And I just appreciate that you are willing to share some actual point of view on the podcast today and not just talk kind of generalities. So thank you. Thank you for putting yourself out there. Some of the stuff you say is a little surprising sometimes, which I love, like, people analytics, not necessarily being just about, predicting, and AI might be more valuable in measurement than just purely automation and some things like that. So thanks for sharing that stuff with me and the audience.
John, you're the best. I mean, we all, like, you get me going. Like, this is a lot of fun.
Awesome.
So anytime.
Thank you so much.
Over tater tots. We got to get some tater tots.
Get some tots. All right. Thank you.